Prosecutors say he tampered with evidence 3 separate times. Not once. 3 times. They say he tried to silence witnesses. 2 different people. People who apparently knew something they were not supposed to know. The gun that killed his wife has never been publicly identified. The motive has never been named. But whatever the FBI pulled from his phone, from his truck, from the digital footprint he thought he erased, it was enough to convince a grand jury to hand down 11 charges. 4 of them for murder. For the death of one woman. His wife. The mother of his children. The woman he told the entire country he loved more than anything. And right now, sitting in a cell on a $3.5 million bond he cannot post, Caleb Flynn is waiting to find out if he will ever see the outside of a prison again. But here is the part that keeps me up at night. What happened in that house between the last gunshot and the first word of that 911 call? Because prosecutors believe those minutes tell a story that Caleb Flynn never wanted anyone to hear. Welcome to True Crime Stories by Cole. Today we are diving back into the case of Caleb Flynn, the former American Idol contestant now facing life without parole for the murder of his wife Ashley. This case just got a major update, and what prosecutors are building behind closed doors is more disturbing than anything we covered before. If you are new here, hit that subscribe button right now and drop a comment telling us where you are watching from. We read every single one. Now let us get into it. Somewhere right now, in a secure evidence room or perhaps still missing entirely, there is a firearm that holds the answer to this entire case. A gun that prosecutors say was used to kill Ashley Flynn. A gun they have attached to every single murder charge through firearm specifications. A gun that, as of this moment, has not been publicly identified, publicly displayed, or publicly matched to a single weapon in Caleb Flynn's collection. And that silence is deafening. Let me walk you through what we know. On the night of February 16th, when officers arrived at the Flynn home in Tipp City, Ohio, Caleb told them something very specific. He said he owned multiple firearms. He said he kept shotguns inside the house. And he said he kept a handgun in the center console of his truck. Normal enough. Ohio is a state where gun ownership is common. Plenty of people keep a weapon in their vehicle. That alone means nothing. But then the officers walked to the truck. And the center console was open. Not closed. Not latched. Not locked the way you would expect if it had been sitting untouched all night. It was open. As if someone had recently reached inside. As if something had been taken out. Or put back. The officers noticed it immediately. You can hear it on the body camera audio. They examine the truck. They look for blood. One of them spots something and calls it out. For a moment, the tension spikes. But it turns out to be paint. Not blood. Still, that open console sits at the center of this investigation like a door that someone forgot to close. Now here is where this gets heavier. The grand jury indictment includes 3 separate counts of tampering with evidence. I need you to understand what that means. 3 counts does not mean one moment of panic where someone made a bad decision. 3 counts means 3 distinct alleged acts of manipulation. 3 separate times that prosecutors believe Caleb Flynn deliberately interfered with the physical evidence in this case. Think about that. 3 times. What was he tampering with? The indictment does not say specifically. That information is being held by prosecutors as they build toward trial. But when you look at the landscape of this case, the possibilities narrow quickly. Was it the weapon itself? Was the gun moved from one location to another? Was it hidden somewhere officers have not publicly disclosed? Was it cleaned? Was it disposed of in the hours or minutes between the shooting and the 911 call? Or was it something else? Clothing, phone records, a digital trail that Caleb tried to erase before anyone thought to look. We do not know. And that is exactly the point. Because whatever prosecutors found, it was significant enough to warrant not 1 but 3 separate criminal charges on top of 4 murder counts. You do not stack charges like that unless the evidence supports it. You do not bring tampering allegations to a grand jury unless you can show that something was deliberately altered, moved, hidden, or destroyed. and a grand jury agreed. 23 citizens reviewed the evidence and said yes, there is enough here to move forward on all 11 counts. Now I want you to think about timing, because timing matters more in this case than almost anything else. Ashley was shot at approximately 2:30 in the morning. Caleb called 911 shortly after. Officers arrived within minutes. That means the window between the shooting and the arrival of police was narrow. Very narrow. Maybe 10 minutes. Maybe 15. What can a person do in 15 minutes? They can move a weapon. They can wipe down a surface. They can change clothing. They can delete messages from a phone. They can open a garage door to stage a point of entry. They can rehearse a story. They can call 911 and deliver that story with enough emotion to sound convincing. 15 minutes is not a long time, but it is long enough, especially for someone who prosecutors believe planned this in advance. And that is what the aggravated murder charge tells us. It tells us this was not impulsive. It was not a fight that escalated. It was not a moment of blind rage. Prosecutors are alleging premeditation, prior planning, a decision that was made before the trigger was pulled. Which means if they are right, Caleb Flynn did not just kill his wife. He thought about it. He prepared for it. And he had a plan for what to do after. A plan that included 3 separate acts of evidence tampering. A plan that included a 911 call so emotional that the first officers on scene could not tell whether they were looking at a grieving husband or a guilty one. But there is one thing the plan apparently did not account for. The people who knew. The people who saw something or heard something or were told something that Caleb did not want coming out. Because those people are now at the center of 2 additional charges that raise a question far more unsettling than where the gun went. The question is, who did Caleb Flynn try to silence? And what did they know? If this story has you hooked and you want to stay with this case all the way through, subscribe to True Crime Stories by Cole right now. Tap that bell so you never miss an update. 2 counts of intimidation of an attorney, victim, or witness in a criminal case. Read that again. Let it settle. 2 separate counts. That means prosecutors allege that Caleb Flynn, while sitting in custody on a bond he could not post, while the walls of this investigation were closing in around him, reached out and tried to stop someone from talking. Not one person. The charges suggest 2. Now, the names of these individuals have not been released. Prosecutors are keeping their identities sealed, and there is a very good reason for that. When a defendant is accused of intimidating a witness, the last thing law enforcement wants to do is publicly expose that witness to further risk. So the names stay hidden. For now. But the charges themselves tell us something critical. They tell us that someone out there knows something about this case that Caleb Flynn desperately did not want shared with investigators or a grand jury. Something damaging enough that he allegedly took the risk of committing additional crimes just to keep it buried. Think about where he is. He is sitting in the Miami County Jail. He is facing 4 murder charges. His bond is $3.5 million. Every move he makes is being watched. Every call he places from that facility is almost certainly being recorded. Every visitor is logged. Every letter is potentially monitored. And in the middle of all that, prosecutors say he still tried to reach out and silence people. That is not the behavior of a man who believes the truth will set him free. That is the behavior of a man who knows exactly what the truth will do to him. Now, who could these witnesses be? I am not going to name anyone because no names have been released. But I want you to think about the circles that surrounded Caleb Flynn's life before February 16th. There is the church community. Caleb was a worship leader. He stood in front of congregations and led people in song and prayer. He was trusted with spiritual authority. People confided in him, and he likely confided in people. If someone in that circle heard something, a confession, an offhand comment, a moment of anger directed at Ashley, that person would now be a critical witness. There is the family circle. Ashley's family released a statement saying they trust the investigation. They did not defend Caleb. That language is careful and deliberate. It suggests that Ashley's relatives may have had concerns about the marriage that predate the shooting. If any of them shared those concerns with investigators, they become witnesses. And if Caleb attempted to contact them and discourage their cooperation, that becomes intimidation. There is the friend circle. The people who saw the Flynns socially. The people who might have noticed tension behind the smiles. The people who might have received a late-night text or a phone call where Caleb said something he should not have said. Those people exist in almost every case like this. And they are often the ones who provide the testimony that prosecutors build their case around. And then there is a possibility that is darker still. What if one of the witnesses is someone who knew about the plan before it happened? What if someone was told what Caleb intended to do and did not report it? What if that person is now cooperating with prosecutors and Caleb found out? That would explain why the intimidation charges are so serious. That would explain why prosecutors added them to an already devastating indictment. And that would explain why the identities of these witnesses are being guarded so carefully. Now, let me explain something about how witness intimidation works in the legal system. Because it does not require what most people imagine. You do not have to show up at someone's door with a weapon. You do not have to make an explicit death threat. The legal threshold is lower than that. Telling someone not to testify is enough. Asking someone to change their story is enough. Offering money or favors in exchange for silence is enough. Even a single text message that says something like "do not talk to the police" can meet the legal definition. Two separate counts means prosecutors believe they can prove two separate instances where Caleb crossed that line. And each instance carries its own potential prison sentence stacked on top of the murder charges. This is a man who is not just accused of killing his wife. He is accused of trying to cover it up. And then trying to keep other people from exposing the cover-up. Layer after layer. Act after act. Each one revealing a person who, according to prosecutors, was willing to do whatever it took to maintain the lie he told on that 911 call. But lies have a structural weakness. They require everyone involved to stay silent. And the moment one person decides to speak, the entire structure collapses. Someone spoke. Maybe two someones. And what they said was powerful enough to help a grand jury hand down 11 charges. But there is still one piece of this puzzle that prosecutors have not revealed. The one piece that ties everything together. The reason. The why. The thing that made a man who told the world he loved his wife more than anything allegedly decide to end her life. The motive. And what we know about where it might be hiding is the part of this case that changes everything. Here is what I need you to understand about this moment in the case. As of right now, no official motive has been publicly stated by prosecutors in the murder of Ashley Flynn. Let that breathe for a second. 4 counts of murder. 3 counts of tampering. 2 counts of witness intimidation. 11 total charges. A bond set at $3.5 million. The FBI involved. A grand jury that reviewed the evidence and said yes to every single count. And yet the public still does not know why. Why would Caleb Flynn, a man who built his entire identity around faith, family, and devotion, allegedly plan and execute the murder of the woman he married? The woman he raised 2 daughters with. The woman he stood beside in church every Sunday. The woman he spoke about on national television with what appeared to be genuine adoration. Something broke. Something shifted. Something happened in the space between the public image and the private reality that was powerful enough to become a motive for murder. And prosecutors know what it is. They have to know. Because the aggravated murder charge requires them to prove premeditation. Prior planning. A conscious decision made before the act was carried out. And you cannot prove premeditation without establishing why the defendant wanted the victim dead. So the motive exists. It is sitting in a file somewhere in the Miami County Prosecutor's Office. It has been reviewed by a grand jury. It has been deemed sufficient to support the most serious criminal charges the state of Ohio can bring. But it has not been shared with the public. Not yet. And there is a reason for that. Prosecutors are under no obligation to reveal their theory of motive before trial. In fact, holding it back is a strategic advantage. It prevents the defense from preparing a counter-narrative too early. It keeps public opinion from crystallizing around a specific detail that could contaminate the jury pool. And it maintains the element of surprise, which in a case this high profile is worth its weight in gold. But we can look at the landscape. We can examine what typically drives intimate partner homicide. And we can ask questions that the evidence will eventually have to answer. Was it financial? Money is one of the most common triggers in cases like this. Debt. Overspending. A life insurance policy that would pay out in the event of a spouse's death. Investigators in nearly every domestic homicide case pull financial records early. Bank statements. Credit card activity. Insurance policies. Loan applications. If there was a policy on Ashley's life, prosecutors would have found it within days of the shooting. Was it infidelity? Another common catalyst. Not just physical affairs, but emotional ones. Secret relationships conducted through phones and apps that leave digital fingerprints even when the user thinks they have been erased. If Caleb was involved with someone else, or if Ashley had discovered something she was not supposed to find, that discovery could have triggered a chain of events that ended on February 16th. Was it control? In cases involving individuals who occupy positions of community authority, who lead worship services, who perform on national television, who cultivate a specific public image, the fear of that image being shattered can become its own kind of motive. If Ashley knew something about Caleb that threatened the life he had built, if she was planning to leave, if she had told someone what was happening behind closed doors, the threat of exposure can feel more dangerous to a person like that than anything else. Or was it something we have not even considered? Something unique to this family, this marriage, this moment in time that no outside observer could predict. The answer is coming. It has to come. Because when this case goes to trial, prosecutors will stand in front of a jury and they will have to explain not just what Caleb did but why he did it. They will have to draw a line from motive to action to cover up and make that line so clear that 12 people unanimously agree it points to guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. And when that motive is finally spoken aloud in a courtroom, it will reframe everything. Every body camera moment. Every word of the 911 call. Every Sunday morning worship service. Every American Idol audition clip. All of it will be viewed through the lens of whatever was really happening inside the Flynn marriage. Because the most dangerous lies are not the ones told to strangers. They are the ones told to an entire community. Week after week. Year after year. Until the person telling them cannot tell the difference between the life they are performing and the life they are actually living. Ashley Flynn could tell the difference. And that may be exactly why she is not here anymore. But there is another layer to this investigation that most people have overlooked entirely. A layer that involves federal resources, digital forensics, and the kind of evidence that does not wash off and does not disappear no matter how many times you try to erase it. The FBI did not come to Tipp City, Ohio for a routine visit. And what they brought with them is about to change the trajectory of this case. The FBI does not investigate local murders. That is not their job. That is not their jurisdiction. Local homicides belong to local police departments, county sheriffs, and state investigators. The FBI handles federal crimes, terrorism, organized crime, interstate offenses, cybercrime. So when the FBI shows up in a small town in Ohio to assist in the investigation of a woman shot in her own bed, that tells you something. It tells you that someone in local law enforcement saw something that exceeded their capacity. Something that required tools and expertise and resources that the Tipp City Police Department simply does not have. And there are only a few reasons that happens. Digital forensics is the most likely one. In 2025, nearly every piece of meaningful evidence in a criminal case lives on a device. Phones, laptops, in the background. If Caleb Flynn used his phone in the hours before or after Ashley's death, that phone contains a record of everything he did. Every call he made. Every text he sent. Every app he opened. Every search he conducted. Every location his device pinged. And deleting those records does not make them disappear. Not really. Digital forensic specialists, the kind the FBI employs, can recover data that the average person believes has been permanently erased. Deleted text messages can be pulled from device memory. Cleared browser histories can be reconstructed from cached files. Even factory resetting a phone does not eliminate everything if investigators get to the device quickly enough. Now think about those 3 tampering charges again. What if one or more of them relates not to a physical object like a gun, but to digital evidence? What if Caleb tried to delete messages, or clear his search history, or remove an app that contained conversations he did not want anyone to see? That would explain the FBI's involvement perfectly. Local police can process a crime scene. They can collect shell casings and dust for fingerprints and interview neighbors. But extracting deleted data from encrypted devices requires a level of technical capability that exists almost exclusively at the federal level. And whatever they found was presented to the grand jury. Whatever they extracted from those devices was compelling enough to support 11 charges. But the FBI may have been brought in for another reason as well. Financial investigation. If prosecutors suspected a financial motive, if they were looking at life insurance policies or bank accounts or unusual transactions in the weeks before Ashley's death, the FBI has the infrastructure to trace money in ways that local departments cannot. Or behavioral analysis. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit, made famous by countless television shows but very real in practice, assists local law enforcement in cases where the psychology of the suspect is central to understanding the crime. If investigators believed that Caleb Flynn exhibited patterns of behavior consistent with a specific criminal profile, they may have consulted with federal behavioral analysts to help build the case. We do not know which of these capabilities the FBI brought to bear. Possibly all of them. What we do know is that their involvement elevated this case from a local tragedy to a federal-level investigation. And that elevation has consequences. Because the legal process that follows is now moving with a weight and momentum that Caleb Flynn's defense team will have to contend with. The bill of particulars that the defense is expected to file will force prosecutors to reveal more of their hand. Discovery will open the floodgates of evidence. Phone records. Forensic reports. Witness statements. Expert analyses. All of it will flow from the prosecution to the defense, and pieces of it will inevitably become public. A trial date has not been set. But when it is, this case will accelerate. Witness lists will be filed. Motions to suppress evidence will be argued. Pre-trial hearings will generate transcripts that journalists and content creators will comb through line by line. And at the center of all of it will be the same question that has haunted this case from the very first minute of that 911 call. Is Caleb Flynn a grieving husband who lost his wife to a violent stranger? Or is he the violent stranger? The grand jury has given its answer. 11 charges. 4 of them for murder. But a grand jury is not a trial jury. An indictment is not a conviction. And the presumption of innocence still applies no matter how heavy the evidence appears to be. What comes next will determine everything. And I mean everything. Not just for Caleb Flynn. Not just for Ashley's family. But for 2 little girls who are waiting somewhere right now for the world to tell them the truth about what happened to their mother. And those 2 girls are the part of this story that no one is talking about enough. I want to end this where it matters most. Not in a courtroom. Not in an evidence room. Not in the halls of the FBI or the offices of the Miami County Prosecutor. I want to end this in a house that no longer feels like home. Somewhere tonight, 2 little girls are going to bed without their mother. They are elementary age. Young enough to still need someone to tuck them in. Young enough to still call out in the dark when they have a bad dream. Young enough to believe that the people who love them will always be there in the morning. Ashley Flynn was that person for them. She was the one who showed up. Not just for her own children, but for other people's children too. She coached volleyball at the middle school. She substitute taught in classrooms across the district. She was the kind of woman who gave her time and her energy to young people because she believed it mattered. And now she is gone. Shot in her own bed. In her own home. On a quiet street in a quiet town where nothing like this was ever supposed to happen. Her daughters did not hear the gunshots. Or if they did not wake up. They slept through the worst moment of their lives. And when they opened their eyes the next morning, the world they knew had already ended. Their father was in handcuffs. Their mother was gone. And the house on the cul-de-sac, the one with the Christmas lights and the minivan and the church stickers on the bumper, was now a crime scene wrapped in yellow tape. Who is taking care of them now? We do not know. Their care arrangement has not been made public. And that is appropriate. They deserve privacy. They deserve protection from the storm of media coverage and public speculation that swirls around this case every single day. But their existence is the emotional bedrock of everything that happens from this point forward. Because every legal motion, every evidentiary hearing, every courtroom argument is ultimately about one thing. What happened to their mother? And who is responsible? Ashley's family released a statement after Caleb's arrest. They said their hearts are shattered. They said Ashley brought endless light to their world. They said they trust the investigation and they trust the process. But there is something in that statement that speaks louder than the words themselves. It is what they did not say. They did not say Caleb is innocent. They did not say this is a mistake. They did not ask for his release. They did not defend him. Ashley's own family looked at the evidence, spoke with local and federal investigators, and chose to stand on the side of the investigation. Not on the side of the man their daughter married. That is not a small thing. That is a family that has seen something or been told something that moved them from grief into a quiet, steady belief that the right person is behind bars. And still, even with all of that, even with 11 charges and a $3.5 million bond and the FBI involved and a grand jury that said yes to every count, even with all of that, this case is not over. Caleb Flynn has pleaded not guilty. His defense attorney has entered that plea on every single charge. And in the American legal system, that plea means something. It means the burden of proof rests entirely on the prosecution. It means 12 jurors will have to unanimously agree that the evidence proves guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. It means that until a verdict is rendered, Caleb Flynn is presumed innocent under the law. That presumption is not a technicality. It is a principle. And it exists to protect everyone, including people who may ultimately be found guilty. So we wait. We watch. We follow the evidence as it becomes public. We listen to the legal arguments from both sides. And we hold space for the complexity of a case that refuses to fit neatly into a single narrative. Because the truth of what happened on February 16th exists. It is real. It is fixed. It does not change based on public opinion or media coverage or YouTube comments. It is what it is. And eventually it will come out. When it does, it will either confirm what prosecutors have alleged from the beginning, that Caleb Flynn planned and executed the murder of his wife and then tried to cover it up and silence the people who could expose him. Or it will reveal something else entirely. Something that clears his name and forces everyone who followed this case to reckon with the damage that wrongful accusation can cause. Either way, the person who pays the highest price has already been identified. Two people, actually. Two little girls who did nothing wrong. Who asked for none of this. Who simply went to sleep one night trusting that both of their parents would be there when they woke up. Ashley Flynn was 37 years old. She was a volleyball coach. A substitute teacher, a mother, a daughter, a woman of faith who showed up for her community every single day. She deserved to turn 38. She deserved to watch her daughters grow up. She deserved to grow old in a house that felt safe. She did not get any of that. And no verdict, no matter how just, will ever give it back. This has been True Crime Stories by Cole. If this case moved you, if it made you think about the people behind the headlines, then I am asking you to do something right now. Subscribe to this channel. Not for me. For cases like this. For stories that deserve to be followed all the way to the end. For Ashley. For her daughters. For every person whose story gets lost when the news cycle moves on. We do not move on here. We stay. We follow. We remember. Hit the subscribe button. Tap the bell. Share this video with one person who cares about justice. And leave a comment below. Tell me what you think happens next in this case. Tell me what justice looks like for a family that has already lost everything. We will see you in the next one.